Welcome to the Via Stoica Podcast. I'm Benny, and join me as we explore a Stoic way of life, one step at a time. What are you living for? That is the question that I wanted to address today, and it is a big question, and it is not something that we can just easily answer, but it is one to at least start thinking about, because I think, at least from my own experience, I have a feeling that a lot of people are not asking themselves this kind of questions, and this one specifically. I didn't for a long time in my life, but for the last couple of years, I have been looking into these kind of topics and understanding how I wanted to live, what I wanted to do for my life, and how I wanted to build it out. And this question is central in this. So, understanding what we are living for will help us make decisions on our daily life that better are aligned with who we are and how we want to live. And I'm not sure if you've ever asked yourself that question, but it can help you to understand what drives you or what worries you. What are the sources of your anxiety? And maybe to see if you are just being dragged along by that societal track that we're all on, that path that we have to live. When we are born, we have to go to school, we have to get our degrees, we have to have a good job, then we need to have a good a house or a nice car, we have to have a relationship. And it's interesting when I got married, that maybe even on the day of my wedding, people started asking me, "Is like, oh, when are you gonna have kids? When are you gonna get to that next step?" And for me, my first reaction is like, "Let me live for a little bit. We just got married, and let me just enjoy it a little bit." And after a while, after a few years of marriage, it ended up in divorce, which is sometimes how things happen. And obviously, that was very sad, and that was a very difficult time to go through. But there was also a sense of relief, and besides the personal part, the relationship and all of that stuff, the relief also came from the fact that I was no longer on that path, right? I was no longer having to fulfill all of those things that the people around me expected, to have the kids, to then do all of that other stuff, to buy a house, to I don't know what. So from a sense of all that really helped me start asking that question, because once you get on that path that other people decided for you, and a lot of the times that is society, that is your family, that is just maybe even you, how you compare yourself with the world around you, that you feel like this is what I need to do to live a successful life. But then when those obstacles or maybe even catastrophes, maybe that's how we judge them in the moment, when these things happen, we are being given an opportunity to take stock of where we are, to ask this kind of question: what am I living for? Who am I? How do I want to show up, and what is the kind of person that I want to be? And when we add to that path that has been presented to us at birth, that's been shown as the successful life, we then add our current social media information input society that we live in, where we can see how other people live. But the problem is that is a distorted view of how they live, because most of the time we only get to see the positive side, how good it is, how well they are experiencing their holidays, their pictures on the beach, the views of all the amazing sights in the world, the travels that they go on, the parties that they have. All of these things add to us comparing ourselves to others. And most of the time, we compare ourselves to people who have something better, something bigger, something more shiny than us. And that isn't very good for our self-worth or our confidence. And we start to look at our current situation. And most of the time, that leads to us feeling dissatisfied with what we have right now. So then we start to work more. We need to earn more money to make sure that we live according to their standards, to what we think we should be striving for. Maybe we take up loans and put ourselves into more debt so we can really shovel and dig that hole even deeper and get really stuck into these jobs and these situations that we don't want to be in, only just because we want to keep up with the rest of the world, because that's how we feel that we should be living, to get that external validation, to show other people, look how well I'm doing. But is that really how well I'm doing, or is that how we think we should be doing according to the world? And if we don't reflect, if we don't pause, if we don't look at ourselves, then we get stuck in that rat race. Then we get stuck in the herd. And this doesn't mean that you have to give up a 9 to 5, become a freelance or an entrepreneur or any of that. No, you can do what job makes you feel good. The issue is that we need to start thinking about what really is important to us. If you're working a 9 to 5, and that 9 to 5 allows you to spend time with your friends and family, to do the things that you really love outside of your job, great, as long as it's with pure intention of who you are. Because if not, you just get stuck into that cycle. You buy things, you see something better, maybe a new version of your phone or your car showed up, and then suddenly that's what you want because that's the latest thing. Or someone else has something better, then that's what you want. And that want drives us to buying more, something new, while we don't even use the things that we bought before. We have attics full of stuff that we not used, or maybe we don't even use half the gadgets or half the things that they can do, and then we just throw them out, buy something new. That's the cycle that we're all stuck in. That doesn't fulfill us. There's no real meaning in that, because it's just replacing one thing for the next and always wanting more, never really looking at where we are. I've seen that around me. There's so many people feel lack of purpose, lack of meaning, unfulfilled, because it's an unfillable hole that they're trying to put stuff in. And then a little bit later, we'll see what the Stoic philosophy has to offer and some other things, because that can be filled. We can feel grateful for what we have. But the starting point is reflection. The starting point is investigation of what matters to us, what are our priorities, and what is really important. And one of the key points here is to remember that you deserve this. You deserve to live your best life. You need to have some compassion, some kindness, some sense of responsibility, and really trying to do your best. But once you get more mindful about who you are, you will see a shift in the decisions that you make, in how you look at life, and how you approach other people, relationships, your job. And you can see that it's slowly starting to move towards who you really are and becoming more aligned with how you want to live. That's why we've got to start to ask these questions. Questions such as, what is really important in your life? What are your priorities? And again, we can have our passions. We can have our hobbies, our projects that we want to build. For example, I'm building Via Stoica into something that I want to add to the world. And for that, I buy a nice mic, I have a good laptop, I have a camera, and I have these things because they will help me create something better. But if I were without them, I could record on my phone. And if you enjoy these things, do it. They help me make my life a little bit easier. If you are a fanatic about cars and you want to drive a fancy car, or because you feel the engine, because you feel the where the rubber meets the road, all of these things, and that really thrills you for that moment, and you can really feel alive, then why not? If you can afford it and it doesn't add any problems. But that's what we've got to ask ourselves. Or if you just need more time to spend with your family. That's another step that I took. As I was working in Dubai and as a teacher, yes, you have a nice set of holidays, but these are fixed. These holidays are not when you need them, when you want to be, to go back home and help out with your parents. And during COVID, that's what I realized. It's good to have these holidays, but if my parents need me or my family and my friends, then I can't really go. And that's something that helped me move around some things and helped me see what do I want to do and what are my priorities and my values in life. Add to that is the question of what kind of person do I want to be? How do I want to interact with the world around me, with the people that I value or cherish, and all the other people as well? How do I want to show up to my job, to the things that I do? And maybe you don't like your job as much, but if you show up and do the best at your job, you can still feel a sense of purpose. You can still feel a sense of fulfillment, even there, just by asking yourself, how do I want to show up? Do I want to show up as someone who doesn't care? Do I want to show up as someone who thinks like, hey, this is where I'm going to be. This is what I've got to do. And I'm going to try and do the best that I can. And who knows what that leads to? Maybe that leads to new opportunities. Maybe that leads to something fresh, maybe a new avenue that you can go into, or you can learn more skills and about your own qualities. And if we ask ourselves, what am I too attached to? What can't I let go? Or what do I want to let go? Because a lot of the times we are stuck in this path because we are afraid of letting go, because we are afraid of the uncomfortable and the unknown. But if we trust in who we are, then the unknown becomes something wonderful to explore. So look at where you are and who you are. And maybe you can even realize that you have the things that you need to live a good life already here in the present, the people around you. You might have enough money already to fulfill the things that you want to do. Maybe you don't need as much as you thought you did to reach those goals that you had set out for yourself a long time ago. Or maybe those are no longer your goals. So see where you are right now. And that leads me to an interesting book. It's not really a Stoic book, and I've mentioned it a long time ago in some previous episodes. It's called Your Money or Your Life by Vicky Robin. And she has a couple of interesting equations that I wanted to share. Because for a lot of people who look at time and money, they say, time is money. But we can change that around. We can say money is time. And in this book, they ask you to calculate how much time you actually have to spend to buy a car, to buy that fancy house, that bigger house, to spend, to have the money that you need. And it's not just the working in the office and the job, but it's also the time you spend commuting, the time you spend having to get dressed, having to get ready, maybe overtime, maybe even just the time you worry about your job when you're in bed on a Sunday evening thinking about or dreading to go back to work on a Monday. That's also time you're not spending on things that you really want to spend your life on. And Seneca puts this well in one of his letters, that time is our most precious asset that we have. We are far too stingy, he says, with our money, with our possessions. We don't want to share any of that or spend it on others. But when it comes to time, we give minutes willy-nilly to everybody who asks for it. Well, that's the only resource. We don't know how much we have of it, and everything that we've already spent is gone. So we've got to be more mindful about this. We've got to be more mindful about how we spend our time. And this book has a lot of good equations on that. And another one is the question that it asks is, when do you have enough? What is your enough? When do you have enough money to allow yourself to live, to really appreciate what's going on right here? When do you have enough stuff? What is enough? Where is that limit for you? What does that actually mean to have enough? Because a lot of people live under the assumption that they never have enough, that they always need more, because otherwise they might stand still, and people say that that's going backwards. But understanding what your enough is will allow you to be more grateful for what you have right here, to appreciate the present moment. And again, it will help you make deliberate choices of what you want to do with your life, because maybe you don't need to strive for that second car. Again, the Stoics talk about the preferred indifferences. A car is a means to an end. Money is a tool that we can use. A car should drive you from A to B. That's it. You don't need two cars or the sports car. I've seen this in Dubai. People had sports cars, and then they want to go do something outside like cycling, and they can't put the bike in there. They need to rent another car or get another car just for that. So think about what your enough is. When are you satisfied? And now let's look at the Stoic side of things, because the Stoics do have an answer for this question: what are you living for? And it's not that dichotomy of control that a lot of people start with when they say, oh, what is Stoicism about? It's a dichotomy of control. No, what's under your control and what isn't up to you. But that's one of the tools, that's one of the exercises, that's one of the parts of it. And that falls even under the discipline of desire as something bigger. But the real goal, the real telos of Stoicism is eudaimonia, to reach the state of good character and soul. And that's really what our job is. So what are we living for? Stoics say, well, you've got to take care of your soul. You got to make sure that what you've been given by the logos, by the universal reason, by the rational universe, when you pass, when you change into, when you die, when you change into everything again, you need to be able to give it back as best as you can. And that's our real job. And when we do that, when we try that, we can understand and we can live with peace of mind and calm. And how wonderful life is then if you can really experience that. But a lot of people, they don't care about it. In one of the quotes, Seneca or Epictetus says, we care, I think maybe it's Marcus Aurelius, says, we worry more about the deadening of the body than of the soul. So what is the goal in life? To take care of our soul. How do we do that? Well, the dichotomy of control is one, right? Where we make sure that we focus on what we can control. We make sure that we understand our impressions, that we make the best moral choice based on all the information that we have, and then live from there. But part of that as well is being virtuous, applying the virtue. As the Stoics say, virtue is the only good. That's the only thing you need to live a good life, and to live in accordance with nature. To live in accordance with universal nature, the world around us, the logos, how we interact, but also our personal nature. And to do so, we need to understand who we are. We can then go back to Socrates that said, the unexamined life is not worth living. We need to understand who we are. We need to know who we are. And that's where we can grow. That's where we can really come in line with our nature. And if we do that, as we've seen before, again, those decisions, those moments where we have to decide what to do, they will fall more and more in line with how we want to live. So our inner life is really what matters most. And then as we read Marcus Aurelius, another question shows up. How do I want to appear today? How do I want to show up for the world around me? And what that question does, because if we look at all the others that we've addressed, they are so big, they can overwhelm us. They will never give us the clear answer that we want, and maybe they won't. But if we break it down and if we look at this very moment, the present, then we can look at all the responsibilities that we have. We can look at our duties. We can look at the roles that we have to apply, the interaction that we have with people. That will give us a lot of information to tell us, how do I have to show up here? What do I have to do? What is the best course of action? And how do I want to present myself? Because if we know that, then we can align our actions with those. Because if I know that, then we can align our actions with who we want to be. We make it smaller. We break it down into small chunks. And from that, we can measure our life based on the progress that we make. Because we will mistakes. And I'm here talking to you about how this can be done. And I'm far from perfect. I have to say, there's many things of my life that I still need to work on. And I am trying my best to do so. But I have experienced my anxiety levels, my worries, reduced far greater than I'd expected. And I only realized that I think a year or so ago, when I was talking about it on the podcast as well, it suddenly hit me. It's like, wow, that has really affected my life for the better. And add to that is I've sensed a greater sense of calm and peace. And there are still turbulent moments in my life. There are still obstacles. There are still moments where I worry and feel anxious and all of that stuff. But I am more capable of dealing with them in a better way. Why? Because I know how I want to live. At least I have a better idea of that. I know what my priorities are. I know what I've got to focus on. And I've learned to apply that pause, to focus on the present and to think, what do I need to do right here, right now? If life overwhelms you, start there. What is being asked of me here? Maybe it is going to work. Maybe it is just watching a series because you just need to have your brain relax for a bit, but do that with attention. And if we take care of our souls, we will see that our travels and our life will go more smoothly, because then we can have the confidence and we can rely on ourselves to deal with whatever fate has to offer. So let's take an honest inventory here. And this is something that the Stoics also really promoted, to have this moment of reflection, a journal at the end of the day. That's what they said, to write down 2 or 3 things that didn't go very well, one thing that really did go well, where you showed who you wanted to be, and then add something that you want to practice or want to do for the next day, if that happens. But allowing ourselves to reflect with the question, how did I show up? How did I spend my day? Did I follow my nature or not? We can then become more aware of the next moment when we do it. We can add that information to help us train, to improve and make that progress that we really want to be making. Think about the moments where you might have compromised for who you wanted to be. That happens to me a lot. It still does. Saying no is something that I find very difficult. I'm a people pleaser. I want people to like me. And that's something that I am still currently dealing with. And it's been coming better. I've been able to say no better. I've been able to stand up for myself more. And I've been able to not make compromises where it doesn't really make me feel like this is what I should be doing. And the great thing about that is that I've been able to say yes or accept other things that really were me, and reflect on what you're actually living for right now. What is it that you're doing? And remember, these are things that we don't have to necessarily change drastically at this moment. But raising that awareness of asking yourself, why am I going to this job? Why am I spending my time with these people? Or what am I actually doing? By doing so and reflecting on it, we can start to slowly make those changes like a big boat. If it starts to steer, it doesn't have an immediate effect. That's what I did when I were in my job, when I was in my job in Dubai. I realized like this is not the job that I want to have forever, but I also need to start working on a plan to get out of this. It took me 5 years. It's not something that really goes very quick, but it took me a long time to build something that can give me the life that I need. And again, I realized I didn't need as much as I thought. So I managed to save up, I managed to build something that did allow me to live the life that I wanted to live. And I'm very grateful for it. And I also understand that it might not last forever, but at least I know that if I make the right decisions, I can get there. And if I were to have a different circumstances, I would be able to live that better, more aligned with who I am, and then I can build, because that's life. We build, we make progress, we have setbacks, and we keep advancing. But if you understand the things where you wanted to go, you can then start making those decisions now. You can say, might not be the job that I want. What do I want to change to? What do I need to have? What are the skills that I need? Maybe I need to follow a course. Maybe I need to save up some money here, not buy this, but put that into a savings account. Maybe learn investing. Maybe learn any of the other skills that you need to live the life that you want and deserve. And the thing is, when we never ask ourselves these questions, we just keep being dragged along by that stream of life where everybody is going towards that herd mentality. And then at the end of our lives, when we are there in a deathbed and we start to look back, we think, I've really missed this opportunity. I should have done better. I should have lived more intentionally the way I wanted to live. At least I should have asked myself those questions. Maybe it's not easy to get out the situation where you are right now, but by being more aware, you can change some parts of it. So as we start to wrap this up, there are some key points here to remember. Character is built in the present in every single action that we undertake. And that's what we've got to focus on. So if life overwhelms you, if it just becomes a little bit big to handle, chop it down to small pieces. Just look at what's right here in front of you. What is your role? What is your duty? What is your responsibility? And how do you act best that is aligned with how you want to present yourself to the world and to yourself? How do you preserve your character and your soul in that moment? And also learn to look at what you do have around you instead of what you're missing. Because if you can build a sense of gratitude and appreciation for that, you can see that life is so beautiful already and that you can live it the way you want to live right here, right now. And don't keep missing those moments because they're gone before you know it. Marcus Aurelius says that as well when he uses many of those river analogies. One of the things he says, you can't step in the same river twice because you're no longer the same person, nor is it the same river. Apply life that way. You have one shot here, one time. Make sure you make the best of it because you deserve it. So again, ask yourself that question. After this episode, maybe sit down for like maybe 5 to 10 minutes, maybe even longer. Talk to someone, maybe a therapist, maybe a Stoic coach, which you can find a Via Stoica, family member or a friend. Ask themselves, what are you living for? What am I living for? And then try to apply it to your life. So thank you for listening. If you like these episodes, please subscribe and give us a like. That really helps us reach more like-minded people. And if you have something to say, some questions, leave a comment. We're always interested to reading those. I really appreciate the feedback that we're getting. And maybe we can create an episode on one of the questions that you ask. But for now, thank you very much for listening, and we'll hope to see you in the next one.